Fellow patriot, this will destroy your 2014. A chilling conspiracy will wipe out 281 million Americans in the next 6 months. The media has sworn a blood oath to keep it hushed, but you deserve to know the truth, because in this treasonous agenda, you and your loved ones are the sacrificial lambs. That's why in this short presentation, I'm going to blow the lid off this twisted plot that has shocked even hardcore liberals, because knowing this secret information will decide who will survive and who will perish when this sinister plot unravels. You'll discover the real secret reason why the U.S. economy hasn't collapsed yet, and exactly when the dollar will turn into dust and our streets into hell. And if you stick with me until the end, I'll also share with you the story of how a penniless, crippled senior survived and prospered through a 4-year economic Armageddon. You will be shocked when you see why others were begging him to take their gold. And even though this might sound impossible now, once you read this presentation and do what it says, you'll discover exactly what to do to ensure that your loved ones are well fed like a king when chaos reigns, even though hungry mobs are roaming the streets or breaking into homes desperately looking for food. While the unprepared masses will see their guns taken away from them and their families shipped off to some FEMA camp, you'll not only escape the terrible fate of most Americans, but will be a hero to your family and to your neighborhood. So that's why if you live off Social Security, currently stocked up with food, guns, and ammo, or have a tingling suspicion that the government is plotting something sinister, then you need to read this urgent presentation now. Hi, I'm Bill White, editor of one of the most respected preparedness websites in the world, Survivopedia.com. You may have seen my urgent bulletins on websites like WND.com, Townhall.com, or TheBlaze.com. For more than a decade, my mission has been to give hardworking and honest Americans just like you the knowledge and tools needed to protect our families and survive any crisis, from a natural disaster to a sinister attack on the U.S. grid, while protecting the constitutional rights of true American patriots from the tyranny of the government. And while I've been focusing on attacks from abroad and threats of massive food shortages due to rising food costs, I stumbled upon something that makes all these pale by comparison. Something that will completely turn our lives upside down. Something that I was utterly unprepared for, and chances are you and your family are not prepared for either. Because in my research, I couldn't help but think, why does my gut say that we're headed for the cliffs when the numbers say that the economy is doing so well? I mean, think about it. The Dow is at an all-time high. President Obama is bragging about super low unemployment rates, and our inflation is so small it would make stable countries like Germany or Singapore envious. However, what I uncovered made my heart stop. It turns out the real economy has more to do with the old USSR than with anything remotely related to a prosperous society. Take unemployment, for instance. The official rate is 7.2%, almost 2/3 the rate it was 4 years ago. Yet, if you're anything like me, you might have noticed many of your friends and neighbors still struggling to find a job. What's happening here? To fix the unemployment rate, a government basically has two big options: create jobs or change the definition of what unemployment is. What did our government do? You guessed it. They changed the way the unemployment rate is calculated and redefined unemployment as number of Americans receiving unemployment benefits. Stopped receiving benefits? It doesn't matter that you haven't had a job since Clinton. In the state's eyes, you're not unemployed. But when you use the way the government calculated unemployment rates before the 1990s, the shocking rate is 24%, far more than during the Great Depression. There are more than 101 million working-aged Americans unemployed. That's the entire population of Texas, California, New York, Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, the 6 most populous states here in the U.S. combined. People who cannot contribute to the economy, who don't have enough money to buy goods, and who in a crisis will probably be the first ones to flood the streets. Count the rest of the population who is either too young or too old to work, and you'll be shocked to discover that a mere 86 million Americans are supporting a whopping 317 million people. This means that the average American worker has to carry 4 people on his back, and even this number is bound to grow. But if unemployment is scary, then brace yourself for its evil twin, inflation. Because if you've been doubting the propaganda that says the dollar is only losing 1.5% in value each year, then you've been right all along. Because if you're checking your bills and receipts, you probably already suspected something fishy is going on. A 1.5% inflation rate would make us as stable as Switzerland or Singapore. Medical costs would be stable, food prices wouldn't go through the roof, and the utilities would cost pretty much what they used to. But this is not what you're seeing, is it? Look, it's not hard to have a low inflation rate when you decide how to calculate it. Heck, a government could show a negative inflation rate if it wanted. All it would have to do would be to leave out the items that get more expensive and only focus on those that become cheaper. And the government has already manipulated the way to calculate inflation rate numerous times throughout the past 2 decades. Each time, the purpose is to make inflation look smaller. That's why even though a big chunk of your earnings goes on fuel and food, these items are precisely what's missing when they calculate the inflation rate. It's an outrage. For example, the price of fuel, like gasoline, rose from $1.86 to $3.30 in the last 5 years. A doubling of price over 5 years. And that brings us to a shocking 15% inflation rate for gasoline. And speaking about food prices, in 2008, the price of a Big Mac is around $3.20. But in 2014, the price has shot up to $4.62. That means an inflation rate of around 10% a year, instead of the 1 to 2% the government is claiming. And worse, even though the inflation rate for groceries are in the double digits, retailers are selling items at smaller volumes. For example, peanut butter companies no longer have flat bottoms on their jars. Instead, the bottom is concave, leaving less room for your peanut butter. Cereal manufacturers like Kellogg use the same sized box so that the packaging looks the same, except the amount inside has gone down. For example, Kellogg's Applejack has shrunk 15%. You can see inflation creeping even in the rolls of toilet paper. They are getting not just shorter, but also thinner. If you use the way the government calculates inflation before 1980, the real inflation rate right now is actually a jaw-dropping 11%. And because of this hidden inflation, the value of your money is getting eroded every day. Every dollar you earn gets you less and less. And this means that you are working more for less pay. Why is the government manipulating all these numbers and lying to us? Politicians are painfully aware that they have to hide the actual numbers. Otherwise, every patriotic American will revolt against them, just like how they fought trying to phase out Obamacare. And as scary as it seems, what is happening now is exactly a reenactment of what happened to the Soviet Union in the 1980s, which operated under massive public deception. Factory managers would send false production reports showing more than they have done. Outstanding results were reported by all industries, even despite the fact that the Soviet Union produced the worst consumer goods in the world. And when they collapsed, it caught everyone by surprise. Because if you just look at the numbers, you would have thought the economy is booming. It's the exact same thing happening now in the U.S. Everywhere you look, productivity is reported as up, unemployment as down, manufacturing as strong, and American wages as increasing. Yet none of it is true. Look, the fact that you're still watching this presentation and that you understand the dangers inherent in these numbers shows that you're clearly more in tune with the horrible financial state of the U.S. economy than the average American. Ask any economist regarding double-digit unemployment and inflation rates, and they would say that you are right next to a collapse. And what's scary about this is that before this, you may have thought that a collapse may be years away, or may not happen at all. Now you know that we are standing at the edge of a 1,000-foot cliff, and a sudden economic meltdown will catch the majority of Americans unprepared and falling to their deaths. And that is exactly what will happen. But what came as a surprise to me as well is that this will happen in the next 6 months or less because of an unforeseen implication in Obama's signature law. Because while the mainstream press is distracted by the failing healthcare.gov website and low sign-up rates, the really terrifying part of Obamacare was not mentioned at all, and that will wipe out 281 million Americans. Look, the average American family makes $51,017 a year, and $8,500 of it, or 17%, goes to health care. But under Obamacare, costs will double, according to data from the U.S. government's very own Healthcare Reporting Bureau. But here's the kicker. According to Fox News, 76% of American families already live paycheck to paycheck. For them, adding even $100 to monthly costs would be disastrous. Under Obamacare, yearly costs would go up an additional $7,450. The government gets its funding from working-class taxpayers, but when those who pay taxes can't even pay their own bills,